everyone. Welcome to Dig Deep Conversations with Christian Leaders. I am your host, Dr. Jaria C. Aljoe, and we are starting a new series over the next 3 weeks. It is entitled Faith and Therapy. Now, originally I was going to call it I Pray and I Go to Therapy, but I felt like that was a little bit too long. So we're just going to keep it nice and condensed, talking about all things faith, all things Christianity, spirituality, being Christian leaders, being Christians, and being believers of the Bible, but also being in therapy, talking about the benefits of being in therapy and going to counseling and seeking out help for your mental health. And so I thought, what better way to kick off this series and to bring to the conversation my auntie, your favorite first lady, Lady Cynthia Swan. We're going to bring her on. Hey, auntie.
Hey, beautiful.
Hello. How are you?
I'm good. So happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you here. Yes, I was telling First Lady Swan that there is nobody that I would have not have in this conversation. I couldn't do this conversation without having her. I had to absolutely have her here. She had to be the first person that I talked to and spoke to, because she has talked about this in a number of different occasions, in a number of different settings. This is her life's work. This is her ministry, right? Counseling, therapy, mental health. This is part of her ministry. And so I thought, what better way to start this off than with none other than Cynthia Swan. So she is, for those of you that do not know, she is a mental health counselor and a marriage and family therapist. Okay, so she actually has gone to school and has done the work and is practicing. So this is not just someone that just has an opinion about this. This is someone that has gone to school and that does this for a living. So, Auntie, why don't you give me a little bit of background about who you are, the work that you do in this field, and then why you want to work in this field?
Well, first of all, let me kind of circle back and say thank you again for inviting me. Thank you for even considering me to come out tonight and address this topic. As you know, this is something that's very near and dear to my heart. And I pray daily about, God, okay, what are the next steps? But as far as my background, I kind of, if I may, just share a little bit of a story. I kind of fell into this because of my own issues and crisis that I myself, like most of us, you know, had to deal with or was faced with in life. And so I was a social worker. I was an ongoing social worker. So I was just working like that. I worked in adoptions at the time. But then crisis actually hit my marriage. And when crisis hit my marriage, my husband and I, we went looking for a marriage counselor. Unfortunately, and this was over 20 years ago, unfortunately, we couldn't find anyone that met our criteria. We knew that we felt like we would probably be better served if we could find a African American, and if we could find an African American who was also Christian, and we couldn't find either. At that time, I'm laughing, but it's crazy, but we couldn't find either. So we ended up kind of just settling, if you will. And it kind of sent us on this journey, and I learned a lot in that process. I learned a lot, too much to kind of get into tonight, but I learned a lot in that process. I continued to work. And then because of what happened in looking for a marriage counselor, I was inspired to become one. I was inspired to become one, and it was a very spiritual journey. With that, because I said to myself, I don't want to see another couple in this area have to fight as hard as we did to find somebody who was equipped, to help them. And so that's why I ended up in school.
Mm,
And so, and then I ended up working at the school that I went to, which was Springfield College. So I went and I got my degree in marriage and family therapy and mental health counseling, which was one of the only dual degrees in the region.
mm-hmm,
That's how I ended up, again, educated. But it still took me some time because I stayed in higher ed, as you know,
mm-hmm,
for a very long time. So it was some fear and trepidation there, right, that I had
mm,
to deal with. And but eventually, about 6 years ago, I said, it's time to go. Because
mm,
we are still dealing with that problem where we don't have enough marriage and family therapists, and we don't have enough mental health counselors,
mm-hmm.
especially in the Black community, and especially in the faith-based community.
Yes,
So,
absolutely.
so now I'm really working toward, some things, again, in the faith-based community as
Mm.
well as in the Black community, with
I
marriage
think
and mental health.
I think that's so important that you shared that part of your story, because it just speaks to the reasons why I got into, education. The reasons why I got into higher ed is because I wanted young women, young Black women specifically, and especially to see someone like them in
Mhm,
higher positions of power. It's
mhm,
absolutely incredible. I think of all of the first, of all
mhm,
the Black first. We
mhm,
have so many that are breaking glass ceilings and breaking out of boxes and being able to then be inspired by, I don't see anyone that looks like me. I want to be
mhm,
that one. And so to
mhm,
hear that that was your intention, your motive behind going back to school and getting your degrees and becoming educated in therapy, so that way, as you said, another young Black couple coming along doesn't have to feel like, oh, we really would love to have a Black therapist and
mhm,
also a therapist that is a believer,
mhm.
and we don't have to, it's not some unicorn. It's not,
Yeah,
it's not
right,
strange.
right,
It's not strange. Can
right.
we talk about, I know we have some other questions, but I really truly want to touch on that subject a little bit further there. Why is it important, do you think, as people are going out to look for therapists, is it important to have someone that looks like you and that has the same belief system as you?
Yeah, because people don't understand how important it is to build rapport in
Mm,
therapy. And the less time you spend in breaking down that wall, maybe the quicker you can kind of get to doing the real work of therapy, or at least that's the hope, right? As a therapist. So a lot of times people are just naturally more comfortable with
mm,
somebody, that they feel like already understands them from a cultural perspective, you
mm,
know so that's what that is. It's not
mm.
just they look like me. Um,
Right.
you know what I mean? But I don't have to spend a whole lot of time explaining my
Mm-mm,
culture,
mm,
explaining my religious beliefs, or explaining my faith, or explaining, how we do things, or
mhm,
the cliches in my community, or the climate, the racial climate, for instance, and how it
mhm,
impacts me and my family, as opposed to other families that, or whatever. So
mhm.
yeah, that's the reason why it's important. Hmm.
And I think, so I've been, to share with those who are listening, I've been in therapy. This is my second round, sort of going back with the same therapist. And I, like you, Auntie Swan, I was very intentional about wanting to find a Black woman,
Hmm.
or if she wasn't a Black woman, preferably a woman of color,
Hmm.
who was a practicing Christian, I want to say,
Hmm.
because some of us can say that we're Christians, but
Hmm.
we hitting the clubs on Saturday nights and we drinking and smoking and having sex and all this other fun stuff. So, a practicing Christian.
Hmm.
And so it was very important for me, and I was able to find one, thankfully. And in the summer when there was so much, racial injustice being shown to us. Not that it's anything new, right? We
Mhm.
know and understand that this is nothing new. We just now see it a lot more. It's a lot more prevalent.
Mhm.
And I really appreciated the fact that when we started our session, she would just ask me, how are you
You feel it.
handling, how are
Mhm.
you dealing with all of this?
Mhm. Mhm.
Let's kind of unpack what's going on and what's happening.
Mhm.
And so I was able to just kind of, like you said, let my guard down. I didn't have to feel like, let me make sure I say the right thing, and I don't want to offend her. Like, no, like this is me talking to another Black woman who is probably having similar thoughts, a similar experience, a similar reaction
Mhm.
to some of the things that are going on. And I don't have to explain my
Mhm.
culture. I don't have to explain my beliefs. I don't have to explain, I feel led by the Holy Spirit to do or say this. They're not writing that down as something
Mhm.
about Dree is hearing voices. Like, no,
Mhm.
she understands and believes in the Holy Spirit. So I think it's really important to hear that, if when you're looking for a therapist, look for someone who you can connect with. And
Mhm.
hi, good evening. Thank you for joining us. Looking for someone that you can just connect with on such a deeper level. And that way you can kind of hit the ground running, so to speak. You don't have to, it's already challenging enough to establish a working relationship with your
Absolutely.
therapist. And
Absolutely.
so I think you're absolutely right, where you walk in the door and you're just like, okay, there are certain things that I just know that I don't have to get into and explain
Right.
euphemisms or all this other stuff.
Right. That can prolong, that can interfere, that can disrupt therapy quicker than anything, where you find yourself even feeling like I have to always explain myself. I have
Hmm.
to, always explain myself. But in it, again, it's because of those barriers. So,
Right.
absolutely.
Absolutely. And so I'm looking at the chat here. So I see some folks. So I am going to put a website in the chat that I use. It's therapyforblackgirls.com. It's a directory specifically of women of color who are therapists.
Mhm.
That's where I found my therapist. They give you like a little bio of the person. Certainly do your due diligence and researching and figuring out if this is a good fit for you or not. And that's one of
Mhm.
the questions that we'll get to in a minute. So let's
I'll be
start. I
in
guess.
that group soon. I will be in that group soon.
Yay! Yes, absolutely. So if you want to connect with, I feel so weird calling you by your first name, but if you want to connect with Cynthia, again, she is a practicing counselor and therapist. So if you want to connect with her, please reach out to her on Facebook. Auntie, can you just sort of walk us through, if I'm looking for a therapist, right? And I kind of don't know where to start. What's the first thing that I should do?
Well, I guess I would, let me ask you a question.
Mm,
Why would you be looking for a therapist?
good question. Um, so I can only share my experience. I had come back from a trip, like a vacation, and I just was really depressed.
Mhm.
I came back home, and normally, like most people, are a little bit sad to be back home from vacation, but they kind of get back into the hustle and bustle of things. And I just found it really hard to get out of bed in the morning, to be motivated to shower, to go to work, that sort of thing. I just felt my entire countenance was different. To the point where my mom said, I think you really need to go to talk to someone about this. And I was like, you know what? I think you're right. I know that there are different traumas, different things that have happened to me that I've experienced, that I know that I want to go to counseling. And I think when I felt like coming home felt like a burden, that wasn't a good feeling.
Mhm.
And I knew that I needed to kind of unpack some of that. And since we're talking about faith and therapy, yes, I certainly prayed about it,
Mhm.
but I also felt like, and do feel like, we have people in positions who have been educated and who have been anointed
Mhm.
to do this work in
Mhm.
order to help us navigate those real life feelings.
Absolutely. So, okay, so let me try to dissect that.
Mm-hmm.
I would always ask myself that question first,
Mm-hmm.
And but you said two very important things that maybe most people don't get. First of all, you got support from your mom. Your mom even
Mm.
suggested, right?
Yeah.
And you are aware enough of your own mental health
Mm-hmm.
to where you knew something, and I hate using this word, but I'm just gonna use it to expedite the conversation, right? I hate using this word, especially when we're talking about mental health.
Yep.
You knew something was wrong, but
Yeah.
I'm gonna say this: you knew something was different
Yes.
about the way that you normally
Mm-hmm.
feel, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it's a couple of things that I want to say, right?
Mm.
Before I, kind of give you the, one, two, threes of, how to look for a therapist. Those are good ways to assess if I may need a therapist to kind of
Mm.
help me just pull through, right? So,
Right.
so those things were really good, and I'm glad that you expressed it. Um, but um but but here's the thing about therapy that I want to make sure that I say tonight.
Mm-hmm.
We don't want to wait until something is wrong,
Yes.
to
Yep.
use therapy, right? you
Yep.
know just like we go to the doctors for our annual checkup. That's the same thing we want to start to
Mm.
do when it comes to our mental health as well.
Mm-hmm.
We want to take care of our mental health just like we take care of our bodies.
Yep.
Well, some of us do. Right? Some of us do a better job than others, but
Right.
we get the concept, right? We get
Mm-hmm.
the
Mm-hmm.
concept. We have a doctor, right? We have a doctor. We get our physicals. We get our checkups. And this, that, and the other. And typically, if something arises, then we got the number where we can call the triage nurse, so we can get in touch
Right.
with the doctor to say something is a little off.
Mm.
What do you think? Or and we can get a diagnosis over the phone, or
Mm-hmm.
if not enough information, I need you to come in so I can check you out, or whatever the case may be. That's the same way we need to look at our mental health. So I
Mm-hmm.
just needed to get that out there, that
Yes.
therapy is an ongoing thing. We don't want to wait until something is wrong. Okay.
Absolutely.
But in this case, because we live in a society, and I'm going to say we also are very active and involved in a community. I'm talking about the faith community, right?
Mm-hmm.
That don't always kind of give that support as far as like therapy is concerned. So
Mm.
we know that we're going to have to go outside of the four walls of the church, and we're going to have to seek, professional help. And that's what you need to think.
Mm.
Okay, so I know that I'm not feeling my normal self, and I think this is more mental than
Mm.
it is physical, but it's
Mm.
certainly gonna, manifest physically in all ways, because it's the whole person, that needs to be whole, if you will. And so I really think that the first thing is that that you want a therapist,
Mm.
and I think that people need to decide, okay, if I do this, if I look for a therapist, I'm going to commit to therapy. Because
Mm.
a lot of people think one thing about therapy, but as someone who's gone through therapy, I think you probably found out therapy is not what I thought it was.
No.
But you
Yep.
had to make a decision, right? You
Yep.
had to make a
Yep.
decision. No, I'm gonna follow through.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna do this. So you got to commit to it.
Mm.
So people need to understand that you got to make a commitment, right? That you don't play with your mind, you don't play with your mental health. So then I think it's always really good to know what again, if there are any desires that you have, or any criteria
Mm.
that you have, as far as like them again being Christian, or a person of faith, or a person of color, or female, or a
Mm.
male, or or whatever the case may be. You kind of having those descriptors available and in mind. And then also, I think it's really important, if you knew that it was depression, or that you
Mm.
just feeling really heavy, because depression is more than sadness.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So we
Yep.
understand that, right? Depression
Yep.
is way more than sadness.
Yep. Yep.
But anyway, so you knew that was somewhat where you were headed or
Mm-hmm.
what you need, look for someone who specializes in that
Mm-hmm.
area.
Mm-hmm.
So with mental disorders or with depression, because all of us, mental health is so big,
Yeah. Yeah.
right? It's so big, and it's different kinds of therapies.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I'm a psychotherapist, but I love group therapy. I love
Mm-hmm.
marriage
Mm-hmm.
couples therapy. I love family therapy. Whatever. And so you can look for people who specialize in in different ways. For instance, you can look for a therapist that specializes with African American women,
Mm-hmm.
with millennials,
Yeah.
uh you know
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
so more than just depression, but you can also look for the other descriptors as well. So I
Mm-hmm.
would definitely recommend that. A lot of information through technology online, or whatever case may be, but nothing is like going to people that you trust
Mm-hmm.
and asking people that you trust, about therapists, that may be in their families, maybe in
Mm-hmm.
the church, maybe, or whatever. So nothing is like that as well.
Mm-hmm.
So I hope I answered that question. Again, it's so much more that I could say, but pretty much that's what I think I needed to say in answering that question.
No, I think that was great. So you talked about, making sure that you have support,
Mm-hmm.
making sure that you have an awareness of something is just, I'll say off.
Mm-hmm.
For me, it just felt like, so I know that I'm not myself. I know that I'm not just having, like you said, depression is not just sadness. Like it
Heavy.
virtually, physically,
Yeah.
you could feel
Mm-hmm.
it. You could feel the weight of it.
Mm-hmm.
Don't wait until something is wrong. So just like, going to your primary care physician, you go at where you're supposed to go. I never do. I'm sorry, Dr. Shook. I never go once a year. I always forget, or I don't get the blood work done or whatever. But, not waiting until
Bad girl, bad girl. Yeah.
yes. It's so bad. But not waiting until something is wrong, but just even, and for me, again, I started therapy again because I had had a lot of major changes happen in my life over the summer. And I was just like, again, I'm having kind of an off day.
Mhm,
I'm using, the tool set that my therapist had given me, and I'm
mhm,
working through this. But I really think that I want to focus in on this one specific thing, and I want to talk about kind of what to expect when you go to therapy in a minute here. But you talked about not waiting until something is wrong. Know what you want in a therapist. So I
mhm,
think it's just like as you approach any relationship, know
mhm,
what you want. Know
mhm,
what are the things that you're willing to compromise on and the things that
mhm,
you're not willing to compromise on. So you might say, I absolutely, absolutely have to have a woman. She has to be Black, or she has to be Latinx, or she has to be white, whatever.
mhm,
But I'll compromise on, maybe it's telehealth, right? Maybe
mhm,
it's over the phone or virtual. I don't have
mhm,
to go in person.
mhm,
So know what you want in a therapist, and then
mhm.
commit to the process.
Absolutely.
That's probably the most important thing. Therapy, like there are sometimes when I dread going to my sessions because I know that we're going to be bringing up stuff that
Mhm,
I either don't want to talk about, I'm not ready to talk about. I'll be in my feelings afterwards. And so
mhm,
it is so important to remind yourself, and I have to remind myself, this is part of the process. This is part of the healing. This is part of me learning how to navigate,
mhm.
my trauma. This is learning how to
That's it.
navigate. And I'm so happy that you said that, because it's so important. And I want to make sure that folks know that if you do decide to go out and get a therapist and the first session doesn't go well,
Mhm.
give it a try, right? Like,
Yeah,
don't give
yeah.
up after the first session.
Yeah, right. I'm glad that you brought that up. That's really important too. But you know what? It's nothing like your gut. It's nothing like your
Hmm.
own intuition.
Hmm.
Like in the first session, if your stomach is in knots, and I mean, like something is, I had that experience.
Yeah.
Something is. I'm like hearing you, but something you just said was not right here, and yeah, so I had that experience. You will know.
Hmm.
You will know. No, I don't even want to give this one another chance or another shot. So
Right.
but I do agree that sometimes therapists exceed your expectations,
Mm-hmm.
so don't expect perfection,
Yeah.
so because none of us are going to be perfect, and neither are you.
Right. Right.
Yes,
Right.
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 So none
Right.
of us are going to be perfect, but you know, don't be so hard on them and don't be so hard on yourself. But
Right.
definitely don't be so hard on the therapist if they are professional,
Mm.
if they are committed, if they know what they're doing, give them a second try. But you will know within the first 5 minutes or
Yep.
so if
Yep.
the therapist is not right for you. You
Yep.
will know if the therapist
Absolutely.
is not right for you, and you will need to move on.
Absolutely.
But nothing is like your gut. Nothing. We call it the Holy Spirit. So I'm just
Right.
nothing is like the Holy Spirit saying, get out of here. This ain't it. This ain't it.
No, it's so true. It's so true. And that's, I think that's one of the things that one of the questions that we have up here is, can you explain what signs people should look for to tell if their therapist is a right fit for them?
Mm. Um, Let me see here. It's quite a few things, honestly, but I'm a probably try to um right fit. I think we probably already covered it.
Mm-hmm.
I think we already covered it. Like I said, there's nothing like your gut. Number one,
Right. Right.
nothing like your gut. You just ain't feeling it, and it's okay. I think that's the thing that we need to know. It's
Mm-hmm.
okay to kind of feel the situation and say, I don't think this gonna work,
Yeah.
or
Yeah.
whatever. You don't have to always, be able to specify exactly why
Mm-hmm.
it's
Mm-hmm.
not gonna work or put your thumb on it, exactly why. So that's number one. But number two, I'm a kind of keep it on the positive, right? And what I mean by that is that people need to understand that a therapist is an interventionist.
Mm.
Okay. So in other words, I'm saying people need to know what a therapist is
Mm.
before they go looking for one.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah.
I remember. I'm going to tell you this little joke before I finish answering this question. So when I switched over to family therapy,
Mm.
I took on a transfer case. That means that it was another therapist in the home before I came in.
Mm.
And so, the first day I was in this home, the the parents was gonna leave their child with me, and they was just gonna go out for 2 hours, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. And I was like, hold up, well, what's going on? And so they was like, well, the other therapist, would always come by, and we could do whatever we wanted to do for 2 hours. I was like, that's a babysitter.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep.
know, so
Yep.
so I had to explain what I do.
Mm.
I was like, I'm not a babysitter. I'm a therapist, and I'm a family therapist, and that means that everybody's going to be engaged and involved in this session, not just your child. I'm not here to
Mm.
babysit your child. I'm not here to
Mm-hmm.
work with your child. I'm here to help stabilize the whole family.
Mm-hmm.
Your child is not the problem. Your child is a reflection of whatever problems exist within
Right.
the family. So, it took a lot of education and explanation. So, in
Mm-hmm.
other words, I'm circling back. People need to understand what they're looking for.
Mm-hmm.
So, a therapist is supposed to challenge you,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right? So if your therapist is challenging you, that's an indication that they might be the right one,
Mm.
not the wrong one.
Right.
And
Yep.
oftentimes what happens is, people they not really ready for therapy like they think, because
Mm-hmm.
they thinking, oh, the therapist is just supposed to come in and validate me and affirm
Yep.
me, and then
Yep.
we do all of this talking and this, that, and the other, or what, or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Mm-hmm.
just say, you're right, you're right, you're right.
Yep.
or whatever. But then when that therapist, listens, attentively, and then take what you said and throw it back at you,
Mm-hmm.
and then you get mad and you don't want that therapist anymore. More than likely, that's not a sign that it's something wrong with the therapist. That's a sign that you're not ready for therapy. But
Mm-hmm.
that might be a good therapist.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So I just wanted to kind of take that question, but kind of
Yeah.
reframe it a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? So again, keeping on a positive tip, if a therapist is challenging you,
Mm-hmm.
that might be a sign that that's a
Mm-hmm.
good therapist. It might not be a red flag like you wanna justify,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
but that might be a good therapist.
That's important to hear because, you're right. You do. Most people go into therapy, go into counseling thinking that you're going to get advice. My therapist does not give me advice. She helps me think about and look at things from a different perspective,
Mhm,
from an unbiased opinion, an outsider sort of looking in and objectively at
mhm,
the situation, where sometimes I'm just not able to do that because I'm in the situation.
mhm,
And so she doesn't give me advice.
mhm,
She makes suggestions, but at the
mhm,
end of the day, it's up to me, to decide how I want to handle things or decide how to move and how to navigate. And she does challenge me. Like even this
mhm,
past week, in talking with her, she challenged me and challenged my thought process on something. And I just
mhm.
was like, man, like, oh, I know like what you're saying is right, but
That's a good
ooh,
therapist. That's a good
right,
one. That's a good
right,
one.
right.
Right?
Like,
Right.
ooh.
And I love the fact that you just said that she doesn't give you advice,
Mm-hmm.
because you're right. A lot of people again, think that the therapist is the expert.
Mm-hmm. No.
I'm not even an expert on me, let alone somebody else, right? So
Right.
we're not the experts on you. We're not the
Right.
experts on your family. You are the expert on you. You are the
Mm-hmm.
expert on your family. And so any good therapist is not necessarily, well, not giving advice, but what they are doing is facilitating
Mm-hmm.
exploration,
Mm-hmm.
facilitating discovery, facilitating epiphanies, if you
Mm-hmm.
will,
Mm-hmm.
facilitating the process, helping you to dig deeper.
Yeah, come on.
Right? Okay, come on. Pun intended, pun intended, you know. But helping you to dig deeper, right?
Mm-hmm.
In self-discovery,
Mm-hmm.
to connect those dots. Like
Mm.
it's nothing like connecting the dots and having somebody there to witness it, and
Yep.
having somebody there to validate it, and
Mm-hmm.
having somebody there to affirm it. It's like
Mm-hmm.
nothing. Like that's the best therapy in
Yes.
the world, right?
Yep.
Am I
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
it's not about giving you advice. I'm not the expert. We're not the experts of your family. We're not the
Right.
experts of
Right.
what's going on with you or even how to cope. But
Right.
getting back to the interventionist, I wanted to share this.
Mm.
Some time ago, when I was still on my journey, very much in my journey. As a matter of fact, I was still in school at the time. And one of my favorite shows was Intervention. I don't know if you ever watched it, but that was
Yes, I have. Oh my gosh. I used to
okay.
like be obsessed
Right.
with that show. Yes.
Listen,
It
I
took me,
was
but
too.
yes, yes, yes.
I was
Mhm.
too. Okay, so
Yes.
I was obsessed with that show, and or whatever. And so I decided to preach a sermon
Mm.
at Auntie Hightower's church, as a matter of
Mhm.
fact.
Mhm.
And I called it Intervention.
Mm.
When I was doing my research, preparing for that sermon, I found out, I never knew this before.
Mm.
I found out that one of the virtues of God is intervener.
Wow. Wow.
Intervener.
Yeah.
And so, digging deeper,
Mhm.
I found out that intervener means to step in
Mm.
and to show a better way.
Mm.
to show a better way.
Yeah.
So I never forgot. I never forgot that. I never forgot that revelation.
Mm.
And I think it has informed the way that I'm trying to do my work now.
Mm.
But I wanna call it, because it's more important to me than just my work. I
Mm-hmm.
wanna call it ministry.
Yep.
I want to call it, my ministry. So
Mm.
so I don't always know a better way, but I know who does.
Right. Right. Right.
Right? I don't
Right.
always know a better way, but what I do try to do, and I believe that it's the responsibility of every therapist,
Mm.
what we need to do is build a repertoire of skills
Mm-hmm.
so that when we are exposed to whatever the obstacle is, um, for an individual like yourself, or in therapy, right? In
Mm.
counseling, in psychotherapy, in counseling therapy, or whatever, um, we have like this reservoir,
Mm.
or whatever. We can pick out some skills, some coping skills, some different skills, to where we can show you
Mm-hmm.
a better way, as
Right.
opposed to picking up the drink and drinking,
Yep.
or whatever.
Yep.
We can show you, I don't know, we can show you breathing techniques, we can show you
Yep.
meditation, we can show you, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
because we got this bag of tricks, if you will.
Yep.
We got this bag of skills, we got this bag of scriptures, we got this bag of techniques, we got this bag. Doesn't mean go in the bag, and give them
Right.
something else. Let me show them a better way. So I
Right.
just wanted to mention that.
I love that. If you are just tuning in, this is Dig Deep Conversations with Christian Leaders. I am your host, Dr. Jariasi Aljoe, and tonight we are talking about faith and therapy with my guest, mental health counselor and marriage and family therapist, First Lady, as well as many other things, Cynthia Swan. And we are talking about all things faith and therapy. So let's bring the faith aspect
Mm.
into the conversation. And so one of the biggest questions that I have is, why do you think Christians are so hesitant? Not all Christians, but some Christians are so hesitant to go about sort of seeking therapy or getting a therapist.
Okay, so I love this question.
Mm.
And it's a loaded question. I think I
Mm-hmm,
said to
mm-hmm.
you earlier that this one could literally take up the whole show. But
Right.
I'm gonna just try to hit a couple of things. I also need to say this, that if I had pursued my PhD, which I thought about it,
Mm.
I did a ROI, no, a ROL, a review literature, to just kind of throw out there, if I was to write a dissertation, do a dissertation, it would have been on this
Mm.
question. It would have
Mm.
been on that question. So
Yeah.
I did a little bit of research,
Mm.
and so it was like what we expected, right?
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
So there are huge historical factors at
Mm-hmm.
play,
Yeah.
when it comes to this, right? Huge.
Mm.
And we're talking about centuries, and we're talking about generations. And I know that
Mm.
psychology is not that old, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
But being called crazy is.
Right. 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 Yep.
And being viewed as crazy is
Mm-hmm.
very old.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And being stigmatized and demeaned, and kind of viewed as a leper,
Mm-hmm.
is as old as the world,
Right.
right, right. Okay, so we got
Right.
that, and that's huge, right? We got
Right.
that,
Right.
that we
Right.
got to deal with. So that is at play.
Mm.
And then how can I need to say this in a way to where I don't demean the church,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
right?
Mm-hmm.
So the church is spiritually heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and but neglects the maintenance of our mind. Now, the scriptures, right? The scriptures talk about the mind and spirit almost simultaneously together all the time, or whatever. But we've chosen to just focus on the spirit,
Right. Yeah.
and you see that in the way that we worship, in what we focus on, what we practice, even in how we value ministry.
Yeah.
Right? Or what's valuable ministry. So
Right.
we have the music, the ministers of music, the ministers of I don't know, the youth program. The
Yeah. Yeah.
preachers. The preachers are definitely glorified, right? Whatever. And then those things that inspire the spirit, those things that make the spirit feel joy or happiness or soothe, comforted in some kind of way. We know those things. We know those things really well, but we neglect, trying to, integrate those practices right into real valuable ministry within our churches, or certainly within the confines of our churches. So if we're not pushing it in church, more than likely it's not going to be pushed at home, or or anywhere else, right?
Right.
For those of us who really practice our faith in church ways, in that way. So yeah, so that's something to consider. So we're not conditioned to pay as much attention to taking care of our mind, our mental health, as we are our spirit. So that's a problem. And the other thing is, people think that the spirit is it. Like,
Yep.
God only wants my spirit to be healthy.
Mm-hmm.
No, God gave you all three. He gave you mind, body, and spirit. So he wants all three to prosper and to be in good health.
Yep.
He even said, let this mind
Be in you. Yep.
right.
Which
He
is
didn't even say,
also
let
right.
this body be in you. He said, let
Right.
this mind
Yes.
be
Yes.
in
Yes.
you.
Yes.
Right?
Yep.
So I can't explain it. I don't understand it. I don't know why we don't get that simple understanding that it is the mind and the spirit that makes the soul. I said the mind and the spirit, right?
You're preaching. Now you're preaching.
The mind and the spirit. And we got to
Yes.
live in this body while we still got life, right? We got to
Right.
live in
Right.
this body. And I'm telling you, if our mind and our spirit is in good health, then it's going to be reflected in this body.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
it's very important for us to spend just as much time. And this is where people are probably going to call me a heathen, whatever. But it is very important to spend just as much time conditioning this mind, taking care of this mind as we do this spirit.
Absolutely. No, I agree. And, like I said, we were talking earlier, and we understand the historical context. We understand, generations and decades of, people being stigmatized for going to the therapist or to the mental institution because you're crazy and that sort of thing,
Right.
and not really understanding that there is a good thing and a benefit from taking care of, as you said, taking care of your mind.
Absolutely.
And so I 100% agree. We were talking earlier about how it took the pandemic to happen, for, to me, in my own opinion, for there to be an explosion of the church talking about mental health. And and I think more specifically, the Black church talking about mental health, because again, we as a people, just have been trained and conditioned to look down upon, I don't need no therapist.
Mhm.
I'm not crazy. There's nothing wrong with me. I'm taking all my burdens to the Lord and I'm leaving them there. And it's like, yes.
Mhm.
And, you know,
And right.
going to therapy, as we talked about earlier, to understand how to navigate this life, right? We
Mhm.
have the Bible, we have the Word of God, we have the Holy Spirit that does lead us and guide us. But
Mhm.
we need to talk about different traumas, generational traumas, even. There was a study that was done that showed that Black Americans today are still holding, their DNA is still holding the generational trauma of slavery.
Epigenetics. Yeah.
It's to me, it was incredible to think that
Mhm.
different experiences that I might be having, some of my reactions might be from the
Your
DNA
ancestors
of my ancestors.
that
Right,
you never met,
right,
that you never got a chance to touch, that you never got a chance to hear, see, you don't know, or
right,
whatever. But it's all in you. It's
right,
all in you, in your mind, in your spirit, and
right.
it's certainly reflected in your body. Listen, one of the things that I found out when I was doing my review of literature, is that um with this phenomenon, right? The clergy, well,
Mm,
first of all, it was like this unwritten rule, or it was this unwritten message that said, if you go to therapy, it's something wrong with you. If you go to therapy, you don't have the Holy Ghost. If you go to therapy, you not really saved.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
And then there was a system that was created, that was carrying those messages.
mm-hmm,
And so, for instance, I'm saying that people started going to their pastors, clergy people. Again, this was revealed in my research. They would go to their clergy people with everything, right? So I'm having a problem in my marriage. You go to your pastor.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
I'm having a problem with my finances. You go to your pastor. I'm having a problem with my depression. I can't get up out of bed.
mm-hmm.
You sent. You're told to pray, and in your bed. Don't get up out your bed. You can pray.
Pray in the bed.
And you can talk to pastor on the phone. Talk to pastor on
Right,
the phone.
right.
Or whatever. But if you still couldn't get up out the bed, oh, the problem is you.
Mm-hmm,
It's a spirit, right? Everything
mm-hmm,
was a spirit, and or whatever. So what I found out was, and I thought it was just the black church.
mm-hmm,
I did. My research showed it wasn't just the black church. It's ingrained, within society.
mm-hmm,
So all of those mixed messages, you must not be a real believer, you must not be a person of faith, and if you're embracing these spirits, these demons, I forgot that part. If
mm-hmm,
you're embracing these demons and stuff, you need to get away from us because you're demonic.
mm-hmm,
So I found out that a lot of these clergy people were also buying into, these myths and these misconceptions, or this misunderstanding about psychotherapy and therapy and counseling. And so what they would do, um, uh, unintentionally, of course,
mm-hmm,
they would counsel these people. I'm a victim of this as well.
mm-hmm,
I'm a victim of this as well. So you counsel these people at their most vulnerable, weakest state, right? You trying to do counseling, and what you end up doing, because you have absolutely no knowledge,
no clue, no knowledge. Yep,
no education at all when it comes to mental health
yep,
counseling.
yep.
um you end up causing much more damage and doing much more harm.
Mm-hmm,
Well, but then you turn around and you just say they crazy. Well, they came in with a gunshot wound, but when they sat down in your chair to be counseled, with their issues or whatever, they didn't walk out. They left out with 10 more gunshot wounds, cut up, put in plastic bags, and shipped all over the world because of you and your, lack of counseling experience and knowledge. So that is also still very much happening,
Mm, 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 mm.
and that's something that we need to deal with as well. So, yeah.
And I think that goes back to our topic at the beginning of the conversation where we talked about it's so important as believers to for us to be in this field, to have therapists, to have people who are going to school. I know, there are many programs out there now for licensed counseling for specifically for Christians,
Mm-hmm.
coming with a Christian background or a Christian foundation,
Mm-hmm.
even because it is so important to be able to tie and connect that the faith and therapy.
Mm-hmm.
I do and should, and people should feel comfortable going to their pastor for spiritual
Mm-hmm.
guidance and not putting the pressure on the pastor to also be my mental health
Mm-mm.
counselor and therapist if that is not their background. Now,
That's not their background, but
some pastors that is now their background, right? And
right.
so that's a great thing, and that's wonderful and amazing if you have that testimony. But I need to be able to say I go to my pastor for spiritual guidance. I go to my therapist for trying to figure out how to live in this real world,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
and to do the things and kind of mirror and marry the two.
Yeah.
Um,
And pastors need to, need to be empowered enough and
mhm.
astute enough to make referrals.
Yes, yes,
Make
yes,
referrals.
yeah,
They need to be humble enough to say, "Oh, baby, this not, I feel for you. This not my expertise. I don't even have any personal,
that
experience with
part,
it. You know what I'm saying? I
that
don't
part.
even have any personal experience with
Hmm.
it. But let me see what I can do. Let me find you somebody,
Hmm.
who
Hmm.
can help you."
Right.
Yeah, I have this conversation all the time. I don't understand why people don't know that just like God has anointed preachers, He has anointed psychiatrists, He has anointed psychologists, He has anointed scientists, He has anointed everything. I mean,
Hmm.
we everywhere.
Yeah. God's
We
anointing is
everywhere.
not limited to just preachers
No,
of
no,
the gospel.
no,
Like, no.
not at all. Not at all.
Absolutely not. And I would love to get to the point where, like you said, we become more comfortable, as Christian leaders, being able to refer out and being able to establish partnerships and connections with community services. And so it's,
Mm-hmm,
oh, Dr. Aljoe, I'm coming to you for this, that, and the third. And
mm-hmm,
I'm like, ooh, hang on a second.
mm-hmm,
I'm not an expert in that area, and I'm comfortable and secure enough in myself and my skills and my abilities to say that I'm not.
mm-hmm,
But I know someone who you can go to who is an expert, who has gone to school for this, who would have a better, sort of more complete understanding of what it is that you're going through, or a better way, as you said earlier, a
yeah,
better way to go and show you how to sort of see a better way in the situation. So I would love to see, and it's not that it doesn't happen now. I'm certain that there are ministries where they do have those connections to the community, and really that's the history of the church, right? It was supposed to be the pillar of the community. We're supposed to go to the church and to be able to get these resources and get these things, and these things are still happening. I'm not saying that it's not,
mhm,
but I think, like you said, we've gotten, sometimes some of us have gotten so far away from that that we forget that it's okay to
mhm.
say that we don't know something.
Absolutely. And it makes no sense to actually be a church and not tapping into all the resources made available to you through your membership. So,
Mm-hmm.
like I said, we got to stop glorifying the three or four ministries that we glorify: the preaching, the singing, the music,
Mm-hmm.
or whatever case may be. Because you got social workers, you got teachers, you got carpenters, you got, all of that.
Yeah.
Those are resources.
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
you need to be able to make referrals to, out of your church. And if you don't have that resource available in your church, then you ought to be connected with other churches and other community-based organizations to where you can make the appropriate referral.
Right, absolutely, 100% agreed. This is, I mean, I knew, we weren't going to get to all the questions, which is a good thing because it has been a really, really good conversation. And I think we've already touched a little bit on this about, when should I pray versus when I should go to therapy. And I don't think there is a versus. I think they go in tandem, right? Like, I think there are things that I've put, speaking for myself, I've put in petition before God, that I'm also, going to therapy to again get a different perspective, get a different view, an objective view about situations, and really being reliant and trusting on God to hear from God and not go off the word of my therapist, right? I think that's really important to specify, is that if I have something in prayer and I'm waiting to hear from God, I'm not looking to get the answer from my therapist. Now, God might use a therapist to get me to that answer, right? And God will always confirm his word, but I am specifically asking for God to speak to me and to confirm it to me and that sort of thing. And so I think while faith and therapy do work together hand in hand, I think it's really important to make sure that we don't place therapists and counselors in place of God.
Right. Absolutely. I couldn't have said it better. And actually, you answered the question. I just want to just go back and just reinforce it. I think prayer and therapy is something that's ongoing. I think it's a simultaneous. I think it's something that we're always doing. Again, I'm about being proactive. I'm about being preventative. You know, if you're only praying when something happens, then your prayers are not effective, right? You know, so you pray for different reasons. You pray to meditate, you pray to center yourself, you
Yep.
pray,
Yep.
to hear from God. You pray to stay within the will of God. You pray to, make sure that you're within the guardrails, if you will, and that you're on track and that you're moving forward. You kind of pray to, check in,
Yep. Yep.
right?
Yep.
You pray to, say, okay, God, should I tap in? Should I tap out? Should I, should I keep moving? Should I, turn, or whatever the case may be. It's the same thing with therapy, and even if you don't, and there should be seasons, right, where you're in a therapeutic relationship with someone, right? But you should graduate.
Yeah. Yeah.
You should graduate. And there's absolutely nothing wrong if you re-engage in
Yes.
that relationship. However, I do believe that you ought to always have therapeutic types of relationships going on with your inner circle, say like with your family, with your close friends, or whatever the case may be, even if you're not necessarily in a physical, professional therapeutic relationship. You still kind of got those I'm forgetting the word. The word is like leaving me right now, but you're still engaged like that. You're still involved, like you're still interacting, in those ways to where your mental health is being checked on by the way that you're engaging in community, by the way that you're engaging in your relationships.
Absolutely. When I ended therapy, because again, when you start therapy, for those that haven't been, when you start therapy, you start off with a goal in mind. What are some things that you would like to address? At least that's how my process was. What are
Right.
some things that you would like to address? And I'm like, all right, cool, here we go. I want to talk about this, and this. And then so you work through those things, you work through those goals that you come up together with your therapist. And so again, it goes back to the importance of knowing what you want in a therapist, and knowing why you want to go. And so once I had met my goals, I was like, I feel like I have a tool set. I think I use the grounding method. When I get really anxious or really worried about things, I've learned different strategies to navigate and cope with different things in my life. And in my last session with my therapist, before I had started again, she said, therapy is just like maintaining a car, right? You can drive and drive and drive and everything is fine. And sometimes you just might feel like you need to go and get a checkup. It might just be that, you need to go get a quick oil change. And it doesn't have to be super long. It could be, we're in for a couple of sessions, or I just need to talk something out. And so I think it is important, like you said, to not only have that professional therapeutic relationship, but also to be able to check in with your friends and to have a circle that you trust that you can be vulnerable with, because in my opinion, you can't be vulnerable and transparent with everybody,
Everybody
right? As
cannot.
a Christian leader, I can't be as transparent all the time.
Mhm,
I have to be wise and use wisdom when it comes to what I'm willing and what I need to share with individuals.
mhm,
Now,
mhm.
if there's something that I need to share because the Holy Spirit is leading me to do so, I will. But you have to use wisdom.
Absolutely.
I can't, as a Christian leader, I cannot
Mhm,
share everything with everyone, because
mhm,
everyone is not in a position to receive it, not in the
mhm,
position to understand the thought process behind it and that sort of thing. So I think it's really important, like you said, to have a group of individuals that you can rely on, that you can trust, that you can be vulnerable with and
mhm,
transparent with.
mhm,
And that works as a therapeutic relationship where you
mhm,
can just say, hey, this is what's going on.
mhm,
Give me, like, what are your thoughts, what, and
mhm,
not to validate. My sister is one of those individuals that I go to, and I have other friends, and
mhm,
I'm just like, here's what I'm thinking, and they're just like, well, they're never the ones to always tell me that I'm right, and yes, girl, like, blah blah blah. Like, no, they're the ones that will also challenge me and say,
mhm,
well, have you thought about it from this way? So I do think it's important, like you said, to have different types of therapeutic relationships, with the understanding that it is important to have a professional therapeutic relationship, but also have a close circle of friends. So
mhm. Absolutely.
yeah.
Absolutely.
So
Mhm.
this was fantastic. Oh my goodness, thank you. This is going to be amazing, and I cannot wait for the next two sessions. We have the next session coming up on April 25th with Latoya Watson, and then
Mhm,
on May 9th with my girl Chantel, all the
mhm,
way out in Chicago. Again, both of these women are Christians, and they also are working in the practice and working in the field of mental health counseling, licensed professional counselors,
mhm,
licensed social workers. So
mhm,
these are individuals that do this work.
mhm.
So before we leave, I just want to ask, what is one thing that you would hope that listeners would take away from today's conversation?
Um, I'm gonna make the assumption that most of the people that are listening are also people of faith tonight.
Mm, mm,
And so I just hope that everybody has heard something tonight to make them say, how can I make sure that we value normalizing the necessity of maintaining or caring for our mental health in our places of worship?
mm, mhm.
Yeah.
It's a good one. That's
Yeah.
a good one. I would love to see all ministries really embrace mental health,
Hmm.
to the point where it is itself the ministry of mental health.
Yeah,
Um,
I would love to see. I would love to see all churches, that have, just like they have a minister of music, they have
mhm,
a minister of mental health. I
mhm,
also would love to see, especially Black churches, have a minister of social justice.
mhm, mhm.
But definitely a minister of mental health, a minister of social justice, and that needs to be a part of every Sunday morning program, because
Yep.
the small things sometimes that can, really make a big impact or a big difference,
Mm,
in our overall mental health. So just to, get a little nugget of
yep.
a word on how to enhance or improve our overall mental health every Sunday morning would be great. Would
Absolutely. I absolutely agree with you 100%. I think there would be so much power in being able to truly look at, the pastor as the spiritual head and the spiritual leadership of the church as they were designed to be. And then also having, the minister of mental health, or whatever the title is,
mm-hmm.
that person focus on the marriage and family therapy and the counseling and the group counseling, and making sure that individuals are being mindful of their mental health and seeing how the Bible talks about, as you said, the Bible talks about taking care of our minds as it is connected to our hearts and our spirits and our bodies. And so, yeah, so that I think that would be amazing and wonderful. And we could sit and talk and dream and vision all day. Minister of social justice, being out there tying and getting ties to the community and making sure that the church is at the forefront as it should be.
Absolutely.
In these changes and in these conversations. So thank you all so very much. Thank you for coming onto the show, Auntie Swan.
Thank you for having me. Yes. I'm so honored. I'm so honored. So you're gonna have to come onto my show. I'll be in touch. You're gonna have to come onto my show. We're gonna have to. We can continue to talk about Dig Deep. I love it. 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 I'm so proud of you. I love you so much.
Thank you so much. I love whenever you call, I will be there. Would love to be on the show, and to continue the topic. And thank you so much again for joining and tuning in. Of course, for all your support and all the prayers that I know you are praying for you, girls. So thank you. If you are looking to connect with Cynthia Swan, you can connect with her on Facebook. We've got the website in the works. Again, she is a mental health counselor and a marriage and family therapist. So she's not new to this, y'all. She is true to this, okay? So if you are looking to and trying to figure out how to get started, with your healing journey when it comes to utilizing therapy and counseling resources, please feel free to reach out to either myself or Cynthia Swan. I put it in the comments, the directory that I use, but certainly there's quite a few other directories that are out there, one specific to Black men. If you are not looking for specific to people of color, you can certainly use different other platforms. So we're happy to connect you all. But we thank you so much for tuning in, watching the Facebook Live. If you're catching this on the replay, make sure you use the hashtag replay. If you're listening to this on the podcast, thank you very much for tuning in. And I will see you all on April 25th for the next session in our series, Faith and Therapy. This is Dig Deep Conversations with Christian Leaders, and we will see you all on April 25th. Have a great night, everybody.
Love you.
Love you.